What's up, everybody? Chauncey Jennings here
And Liliana Fidua.
with another absolutely phenomenal episode of the Illuminary panel. And with this Illuminary, we're so excited to have because it's going to be insightful, impactful as usual. And you do not want to miss the last bit of this conversation. So stay tuned.
And before we get started, make sure you guys follow us on all social media platforms at Luminary Panel. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a beat as we continuously grow.
Thank you so much, Liliana. Without further ado, Mr. Erick Deckers. Mr. Erick, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. You enlightened me with this one fact that I didn't know about. Today is National Pirates Day.
Talk like a pirate day.
Huh?
Arrgh.
Arr.
That's exciting. I didn't know that either.
Yeah. You know what a pirate's favorite letter is?
Arrgh.
Yeah. Oh, it's C.
Why?
It's the C.
Why?
It's the C.
Oh, the sea, because they travel by sea.
Yeah,
Oh,
see?
okay.
That's a good one. He said
I need my brain to wake up. That's
me
a good
too.
one.
I thought the letter C. I was like, what you mean by C? But no, let's continue with this conversation. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your brand represents.
Okay. So basically, I am a content writer
Nice.
and I ghostwrite blog articles for companies, but then I also ghostwrite books for people and write business books or memoirs, depending on what they need. And so for the last 14 years, I have owned my own content marketing agency, but got my start in social media marketing when I wrote my first book about personal branding and social media marketing back in 2010.
Nice.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, and I actually myself am in kind of like the social media, public relations, and that kind of world as well. So I have much respect for you for doing so much in that space because it's up and coming and people are trying to learn as we go and as we are involved with it as well in a lot of different places in our life. So, kind of within that creative space, how do you nurture your creativity outside of work, and where do you find inspiration for both your personal and entrepreneurial pursuits?
Um, so a lot of the way I just nurture the creativity is I read a lot, and
Ah,
I think that's important. Entrepreneurs should be reading a lot anyway, but since I focus mostly on writing, I tend to read a lot of fiction. It's great for escapism, but then I have a few favorite authors that I pay attention to how they write, and I basically steal their techniques and try to do some of the same things that they do. But then, being an entrepreneur, I also help lead an entrepreneurial organization here in Orlando called 1 Million Cups, which is
yeah,
part of a national network of
yeah.
1 Million Cups.
Mm.
And so
We actually
being
had Rupert on our podcast as well.
Yeah, and Rupert's one of the organizers, and Rupert runs the Orlandopreneur meeting, which is a monthly entrepreneurial meeting. I
Right.
was just there last night,
Yeah,
and so
Oh,
going to
fun.
events, it is. It's always a good time. I have not missed one yet ever since he started last year, but just going to those events also kind of inspires me and energizes me. And when I talk to people, I get energized and I get new ideas about who I should introduce to whom and connections that I think people should make, even if they don't have a chance of working together. I sometimes will just introduce two really smart people and just say, I want to see the ideas that come out of your two big brains just mashing together
yeah, that's
and
good.
see
Yeah.
what happens. So that's, I get a lot of enjoyment out of that, but it certainly helps my own entrepreneurial energy as well.
Wow, that's great. And within the networking world, do you have a few tips for people who haven't really been to networking events and things like that, kind of as their first intro, what they should do to prepare beforehand?
First of all, make sure you have business cards or get one of the apps like Blink, BLINQ, that
Mm.
does your business card on your phone, but go prepared to be able to give your information. And then when you go to a networking event, keep in mind that the people that you meet there will most likely not be your customers, but they know your customers. And
That's
so you
good.
want to meet the people who become referral sources for you.
That's
And
good.
and they're not going to make those introductions because you met them there. The people you meet at the networking events, you're looking for the people that you want to have coffee or lunch with, and you're going to build a relationship. They're going to get to know you, and they're going to learn to trust you. And that's when they will be willing to make introductions for you. But when they do this, and if you do this for other people, you don't owe each other favors. This is not a tit for tat. You do something for me, I do something for you. If people introduce you, your job is then to more or less pay it forward and do that for other people. And so similarly, when you do things for people, they don't owe you. You just keep doing things for other people, helping them reach their goals. That will be visited back to you, maybe 2, 3, 4 steps down the line, 2, 3, 4 years down the line. You never know, but just do it without expectations.
Yeah, that is so good. I'm glad that you touched on that point, because I think a lot of people don't understand art of networking. And when I say the art of networking, there's a curriculum or a scientific base behind it, where sometimes you may find your customer there, like you said, but most of the time you won't, because most of those people are looking to, refer other people to other people so the connection could come back to them. So to go back on that, what were some of the things that you did in your first experience in entrepreneurship and networking events when you first went to your first networking event?
I sort of, what I just explained was taught to me. And so I just went looking to meet a couple people. My goal was to meet a couple people that I would find interesting enough and friendly enough to want to sit down for coffee or for lunch. I've met people who their goal is to give out as many business cards as they can, and they think that makes them successful. And they'll approach a group of 4 people talking. They'll whip out their card like they're dealing blackjack in Vegas, and then they move on to the next group, and they think, I gave out 30 cards today. I did really well. And then they don't realize or don't know why nobody called them, because they didn't make an impact. So I knew that when I got there, I just had to meet 2 people. That was my goal. And I talked to a few, but there were 2 people that I did meet my goal. I met 2 people that I said, hey, do you want to get coffee later? And we actually did that. So that's how I got started. And then I thought, if I keep going to all these events and just make it a goal every time of 2 people, you'd be surprised how quickly you can grow that.
That's true. I think my first ever networking event was the Orlandopreneur. And I met a few people, but my goal was to at least meet 4 to 5 people that I know that out of the 5, I know out of the 2 or 3, I actually have conversation with, build a relationship with. But because it was my first one, I didn't know what to expect, and I was very nervous in the beginning, but that's just because I just didn't know what to expect overall. But after a while, once I said, okay, I'll set this goal, it made it easier for me to go in there, talk with confidence, and allow people to understand what I was doing. So let's pivot a little bit to your writing career. And can you describe how your content and writing styles have evolved since you began blogging, and what pivotal moments influenced these changes?
I've always written in sort of a newspaper style on my blog.
Oh, nice.
I've been a newspaper humor columnist for about 28 years, and I started blogging in 1997. So I've been doing it a long time, and I still have it, but my first blog I set up in 2003, and that was my humor blog. And as I started blogging, I thought the easiest way to share information is just to follow that journalistic style of the most important information at the top of the article, and then as you go down, it gets less and less important. They call it the funnel, or the inverted funnel, or inverted pyramid. And so I decided to follow that style. I think a couple of the pivotal moments that changed the way I write, one is just doing it a lot. Like, I've written over 4,000 blog articles in the last 14 years, but also using Twitter really honed my humor writing, because at the time we had 140 characters, and I would have to do a setup and a punchline of something funny in 140 characters. And my additional challenge was don't abbreviate.
Mm.
Use proper punctuation, don't abbreviate, tell a joke in 140 characters. And so that really taught me to write as tightly as possible. And that translated into my humor writing, which actually then sort of informed all of my writing. So I tend to write very short sentences, very informative. I don't use adverbs, but that all happened because I decided on Twitter, I'm gonna make this my style, and that spread to everything.
So within the writing world and for other writers themselves, can you share with us some strategies that you personally use to get over writer's block?
This is a bit of a controversial topic. I'm one of those people who don't believe in writer's block. At least as a professional writer, I can't afford to be blocked. My family does not eat if I have writer's block. True. And so, nobody else gets their profession blocked. Accountants don't get blocked, and salespeople don't get blocked, and human resources people don't get blocked. To me, a writer who has writer's block is a writer who doesn't take writing very seriously. Because if you do, you will sit down, you'll get your ass in the chair, and you will just power through it. And the stuff that you're going to create is going to be terrible, and that's okay. I mean, the first draft of anything we write is terrible anyway. So just get over the fact that, well, this is terrible. Don't be afraid to be terrible. That's what editing and revisions are for. But just get it out. And then eventually you will find that even if you're clogged up, you will find that as you power through it, then something will give and it'll all get easy. And then the words will come back. But too many people only write on the weekends, and it's got to, the sun's got to be coming in the window just right, and they've got to have their pot of tea just so, and if any of those elements are wrong, they can't do it. Well, that's somebody who only writes on the weekends. But if you're a serious writer, you're going to write every day, and even things like emails and tweets, you're going to take that seriously and use that time to practice. And so when you do get to your special private writing time, you're ready to go, because you have been exercising that muscle all week long. So those are the ways to prevent writer's block, to get over it. And I will admit, I get stuck sometimes. I can't think of what to say. I can't think of, how do I want to open this article? And so there are two methods that I teach to people, and I use myself. One is called Dear Mom, and the other is called Look Stupid. And Dear Mom is you pick a topic you want to write about, and you write an email to your mom. Dear Mom, let me tell you about this thing I learned about why you need a high risk merchant services provider for your store, and that's a credit card processor. And so then you explain to your mom in a language that your mom understands, as simply as your mom will understand this, because you're teaching her a new concept, and you write it in a tone that you normally email your mom in. And so then, you write your article, you explain high-risk merchant processors to her, and then you go back and you delete that first part. Dear Mom, let me tell you, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got your blog article. But just by writing that Dear Mom, that kind of frees up your mind, because you know how to explain this thing to mom.
Right.
Similarly, the Look Stupid method is not you appearing to be dumb, but rather you write your article and you say, look, stupid, let me tell you how this works. And then you explain it in a way so that this person that you're addressing, this stupid, gets whatever you're trying to say. And the language will be different. It will be more direct. You want to be nice to this person. You're not going to be mean and say, I can't believe you're such an idiot. You don't get that. You don't say that. But rather you just say, look, stupid, let me tell you why you need a high-risk merchant processor. And then you explain it directly, succinctly, in a way that this person will understand it without being insulting. And then you go back and you delete that first part and you're done. So those are two methods I use a lot when I get stuck on something and don't know quite how to open it. And I heard about it, and then I tried it once. I think it was a guy named Josh Bernoff, Bernoff. He's a great copywriter and writer. He proposed it, and I thought, I'll give that a try. And so sure enough, tried it one day when I was stuck and popped right out. Just got me going. I got the whole thing done in like 20 minutes, and So those are the two methods I use the most.
Oh, wow, that's great. So, within the world of content and blogging and everything like that, too, and if this is applicable, can you talk to our audience about how your monetization works kind of behind all of that and behind the content and everything of that nature as well?
So I don't make money myself because of my own content. In fact, I just
Mm,
had this discussion today with another copywriter. We both have seen this. You don't make money off of your writing. You make money by putting someone else's name on it. And
mm,
so, like, I've written several books and I've made a few bucks, but I certainly don't make a living off of those. But what I have made is speaking fees, because I've, written books on social media marketing and personal branding. And so people ask me to come speak about those topics and I get paid. So
wow.
I make money because of the book, but not from the book. And so for somebody who wants to create a revenue stream through content, don't do it from selling content. You either become like a freelance copywriter or ghostwriter like I am, or you create a thing that people are willing to pay you to come and talk about. So, they
Mm,
pay you to speak at a conference, they pay you to teach a class, or you create a product and a system that you can sell, and then that becomes some passive income. So you've got a 12 a 12 session class that you teach a certain concept and charge $299 for it, and there's a series of videos that people can watch, and then while you're off promoting it, people are coming and watching it, and you're not even teaching it over and over. You reviewed it or you recorded it once, you put it out there, and then money just comes in. So those are the best ways I think people can make.
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's very insightful, Eric, because I think people get a misunderstanding of how you can find ways of making money, no matter if it's writing or podcasting, or there's always ways. You just got to be diligent and intentional about what you're looking to get out of it. I know for us, we already had this conversation, me and Liliana, that once we started, we're not going to get paid in the beginning, obviously, because we got to get our name out there first. But as we get our mind rolling, things will come in, different ideas will come in. So you also mentioned that you had a few books written out, and then I also want to piggyback on that because when I met you, we're at a lunch and learn with Dwayne Kent of the Art Network group, and you were one of the speakers, and you always, well, one of your points was to encourage people to want to write books, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for the people that don't know how to write or feel like they don't know how to write, why do you say you should write a book?
Well, for a number of reasons. One, especially for somebody who's older, maybe they're looking at retirement. A lot of them want to write a memoir because they want to leave a legacy
Ah, that's
for
my
their
next question.
their kids, their grandkids, their
Mm,
great grandkids, and so that's a good reason. But even if you're younger and you're in your 20s, that's still a legacy.
Yeah.
You might
mm,
not, 30 years, 40 years later, you might not think about that book, but somebody could find it, and the information that you present there could be useful. And so, I love used bookstores, and I sort of romanticize used bookstores and finding old books that were written in the 60s and 70s, and these books, and you open the pages and they have not had a chance to breathe or see light for 50 years.
Yeah.
And I get to discover it, and when I open this book and somebody is seeing this book excuse me, for the first time since it was published, that's kind of cool. So your book could be that hidden time capsule that somebody comes across. More useful to you now is that business book that is your business card. It proves that you know what you're talking about.
Mm.
And I was just talking to a woman yesterday. She's got a new business methodology that she is developing, and she wants to write a book. Excuse me. She wants to write a book that teaches people why they need this methodology and how it works. And she could do sales call after sales call and try to convince people she knows what she's talking about. But there's just something about having a book that people go, oh, this is a book. You must know what you're talking about.
Right.
So even if they never read it, they automatically believe her because she's got this 40,000 word book about her methodology. So that, to me, those are the two best reasons, social proof, business card, and legacy.
Interesting.
Wow, that's awesome. And within the books that you have read and you've seen, what have been like two that have been the most helpful for you, whether it's in your career or just personally? What have been your two favorite that you feel like our audience would benefit from reading?
For me as a writer, I would say Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was one of the best ones because I read that when I was 16. And it's a humorous book, and it helped me want to write humor, but it was also write satire, which is what that book is. Gosh, I've got so many. I'm trying.
It's a hard question. We're all trying to expand on our reading, so it's a personal question.
Stephen King wrote the only book of Stephen King's I will ever read called On Writing. I can't read horror books; they give me nightmares. But he wrote a writing book called On Writing, and so that's a good one. But I like to find, like I said earlier, I like to find fiction books that make me want to be a better writer. Ernest Hemingway's short stories were good. I learned how to write in his style. Roger Angell, who was the baseball writer for the New Yorker, and that's Angel with 2 L's. He writes more with long sentences, long flowing sentences, but he writes so beautifully about baseball, the sport, without ever, and he does, but without very often writing about games. He was not a sports journalist who wrote gamer stories about, these two teams played and this team won. He doesn't write those. He writes about the concept of baseball, and he does it so well. He has, I don't know, close to 12 or 15 books just about baseball. And it's such beautiful writing that I read several of his, just wishing I could write like that, write in these long flowing sentences. And I write more like Ernest Hemingway, very short, stubby sentences.
But that's good for content. So that's good.
Yeah, anybody who is going to write, even if you don't want to call yourself a writer, you are. If you write things, then you're a writer. But even if that's not a career choice, if you are going to write and communicate as part of your as your brand and your business, you need to read other writers and not blogs. To be honest, most blogs are kind of garbage. When you look at just the general distribution curve, most of the stuff at the top of that curve is average. You don't get good by reading average. You get good by reading great. And so find some of the best known authors and read their stuff and practice what they do. Read just read the New York Times. Those are some of the best writers in the journalism industry, and you can learn a lot by how to write effectively just by reading those guys in the newspaper. Or read old sports writers. Some of the best writers in any newsroom are the sports writers, and their feature stories are amazing. And so Joe Posnanski is one guy, Posnanski. Joe Posnanski writes great sports books, and just his writing alone is a masterclass in how to approach storytelling. So pick that up, read that, read any of his books, and then say, well, I'm going to write about my thing. I'm going to write about high risk merchant processing in that same way, and you'll be a much better writer for it.
So because we're talking about different authors, let's go back to the time you started writing. 2 questions. Who was the influence, and what made you want to be a writer?
Well, I mentioned Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions, and Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. Those are 3 of my most favorite books, and I read those when I was 16. In fact, the Vonnegut book and the Catch-22 were on a poster of in a bookstore for Banned Books Week. And I thought, look, somebody's made a list of books I'm not supposed to read. I'm going to go read those. And so I read those 2, and I read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I thought, I want to do this. I want to write books, and I want to swear in books, and I want to make fun of people in power. And those 3 books did that so well that I thought this is sort of what I want to do. And then I never thought any more about it, but subconsciously I was always writing things. I'd write stories in high school, and I wrote for the college newspaper, and then started writing a newspaper column after I finished grad school. And I realized, oh, I'm doing that thing I wanted to do when I was 16. And when I had that realization, then I thought, well, I should take this shit seriously then. And so I really started reading books about writing and reading great authors and focusing, making sure I'm doing what they're doing. So those were the 3 books initially, but I've read, over my lifetime, I've read thousands of books, and those 3 stand out the most as the best examples of who made me what I am.
So within the social media world, can you give our audience 2 to 3 tips as to the best ways that they can kind of begin their career in social media, whether that's them starting on TikTok or Instagram or just trying to become into that almost influencer role? What are some little tips that they could take to begin their career?
I think the first thing to do is to make sure you treat social media as a social tool. It's not an advertising tool. And especially with companies, I see this. They think, hey, free advertising. And so all they do is they put out sales messages about buy this, and this is on sale, and we've got a coupon, and they ignore their audience. And they try to grow their audience, and people aren't interested, and they don't engage. And then they think, well, Twitter sucks. Nobody's doing anything with us. What you really need to do is focus on the people and build relationships with the people. And so I especially say this to writers who want to promote books and they want to get people to buy their books. As you start with other writers, writers are readers. And so, if you make friends and just online friends with these other writers, they're going to want to support you when your book comes out, because you're going to want to support them when their book comes out. And so similarly, if you're going to be an influencer anywhere else, find people who like that kind of stuff that you like, whether it's camping or fashion or sports or fitness or, language or finance. Find the people who do it, connect with them. And then this is the important part, have conversations with them. Treat them like people, talk to them, ask them questions, answer their questions, just have conversations. Don't get into political arguments. Even if they say something you don't agree with, just have conversations, treat them like friends. And those people will want to consume their friends' content. They will want to watch their friends' videos and respond to their friends' tweets. And so it all starts with building that relationship. And then as you grow and you get more people following you, you have to remember to keep in touch and stay in contact with the people who are following. This is not your audience. These are your friends. Even if you have 18,000 of them, these are 18,000 of your friends, and they want to support their friends. So treat them like people, ask and answer questions, and just have conversations. Even if it gets hard, if you're wanting to make a career out of this and you're going to spend 4 hours a day talking on Twitter and Instagram, that's your job. It's not just making videos and putting it out and then sitting around drinking Mai Tais. It's having conversation and doing all of the promotional work. That's where the actual work happens.
Yeah. We're in this process. We're in this weird, not necessarily weird, good, but kind of overwhelming, because we're actually experiencing so much success so quickly without even building the audience like we want to, right? With the caliber of people that are on the panel, I believe that we're going to really corner this market in Orlando. We're in Orlando, people, but
remember that.
remember, we're in Orlando. But we really feel like we can corner this market, and we're in this weird situation on how, okay, right now we're at a pivotal point or a momentum point where we can kind of push forward towards doing live events, but also we don't have the backing or the audience big enough to be able to promote that yet. So what would be your advice for us, knowing that detail or those details, on what we should do next?
I would start small. only because that's who your audience is. Start small. This may not interest you at all. I was listening to a podcast today. I'm a big Sherlock Holmes fan. I was listening to a Sherlock Holmes podcast.
Cool.
And there's a group of, it's essentially a fan club, called the Baker Street Irregulars. And they've been around for over 100 years, and it was started by a guy named Christopher Morley. And Christopher Morley liked to start clubs. And even if they only lasted for 6 months, he would just, and the club was basically just a group of friends getting around for dinner and talking about whatever the topic of that club was. And there might be 8 people there. Well, there was just one series of dinners about Sherlock Holmes, and this other guy comes to him and says, "Hey, can I be a part of this? I want to help keep it going." And Morley said, "Sure, you have to do all the heavy lifting. I'm just going to show up, and it's still my club." And this guy, Edgar Smith's like, "Okay, just so long as I can be a part of it." And so he did all the work that ended up laying a foundation for what became a society, a more of a an academic society, where they have an annual convention in New York City every January, because that's where you want to be, is in New York City in January. And you don't want to be in New York City.
Freezing, too cold.
Yes, exactly. But the group is, I guess it's closer to 80 years it's been around.
Wow.
But it all started with this, just 8 guys sitting for dinner talking about Sherlock Holmes. And so for you, I would say gather as many people as you can, and it might be 8 people, and it might run that way for a few months. And you go to Miller's Ale House or someplace like that, and you just get a big table and you talk about personal branding and social media and any other topic that comes to mind, because one day that's going to be 12 and it's going to be 20, and then you're going to say, you know what, we need a catering hall. This is too big. We need to be up at the Citrus Club, or we need to meet in the library. I don't know. And so start small. Don't wait until you have a big audience and then announce a big splashy event. Make it intimate and grow it through the grassroots. Now you look at like Orlandopreneur, which you said you've attended and I've attended, and you see what the ARC is doing. They created a big audience and then went big right away, which is fine. But what if it goes, you create a big audience and it flops? Do you stop? Or do you try it again? A lot of people will stop. Well, we had 1,000 people that we invited and 2 showed up, so we're done. But if you invite 8 and 4 show up, that's pretty good. Let's do it again. Start slowly, and you have built a firmer foundation by doing it that way.
Wow, I love that. And I think that makes a lot of sense too within itself, because if you really get to know the people who are at the beginning supporting you, then they probably will be more apt to supporting you in the future, and then gain that actually very real and organic and strong following, which I think everyone would love to have, and kind of keeping that going as you grow, because I think that is sometimes lost, as you were saying as well, because that is a huge thing to kind of continue with that community and keeping that genuine as well. So within kind of that world, can you talk about maybe the most exciting thing that's happened in your career so far?
That's a good question. I've had a great career. I'm very pleased. I think it's a couple of times, just the people who have contacted me and said, "Hey, can you help me write this?" There's the CEO of American Family Insurance, which is a Fortune 500 company. We don't have it in Florida, but they own the General. And so if you know the General, that's owned by one of the biggest insurance companies in the country.
That's crazy.
The CEO contacted me and said, "Hey, I want to write a book about social media and CEOs. Can you help me?" So that was pretty cool. Another time, I got a referral to write a book, write the memoir of a retired U.S. congressman in Indiana. And the congressman liked me, and even though he was a Republican and I'm a Democrat, he was willing to work with me, and we were working, and it was going great. And then he had to cancel the project because he was so busy. He said, "I'm busier being a retired congressman than I was as a congressman." And so he canceled the project. But just the fact that those 2 wanted me, that was pretty exciting. I think a third book, I would say, or third accomplishment, was when I published my first novel.
That's huge.
And I did that in 2019, and then it reissued last year with a new publisher. So
Mm.
that's I think that's my greatest personal accomplishment.
Nice. So because we're talking about accomplishments, and I'm known for being the devil's advocate on this show, let's talk about the failures. Let's talk about the things that you felt like, oh my gosh, why am I in this? How did I get myself in this? And what were the things you did to get yourself out of it to motivate you to continue to keep writing?
Oh God, so many. It's hard to know where to start. I I was working on a true crime book that was
Mm,
supposed to be done at the end of August. And with a week to go and a third of the book to go, the client said he didn't like it and canceled.
Oh man.
And
oh,
and so that was hard. I had
that's
another
Wow.
book
crazy.
project. This happened yesterday. I had a book project I was going to start working on with a former elected official here in Central Florida. He was going to write a book, and he decided he didn't want to do it.
Hmm?
So that's happened, and then I've had clients who we parted ways because they had the company got bought out, or they had a restructuring of the department, and the new person said, well, we don't need this anymore, we don't need this guy anymore. So the thing I did was just went to bed and got up the next day. And that's sort of the life of a small business owner or an entrepreneur. It's like playing baseball. You succeed 3 times out of 10, 2 times out of 10, and you
Mm,
learn to just shake off the 7 or 8 failures.
right.
The guy who strikes out 7 times can't think about that when he goes up to bat the 8th time.
That's
And
true.
so as an
That's so
entrepreneur,
true.
you get lots of no's, and you get lots of failed projects, and you get lots of canceled projects, and you get lots of people who just ghost you and disappear, and you go to bed, get up the next morning, and do it again.
Yeah. And it's so crazy on how people that's never taken a chance or a risk to be entrepreneurs have so much to say in the process of a person that's actually taking a risk. Like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should do it this way, or that's something that's not going to prosper. Like, you don't understand how difficult one it is mentally as an entrepreneur to go through these things. And two, if things go wrong, I have nothing else to fall on. You know,
Mhm.
Exactly.
unless you have a plan B, but most people don't really have a plan B because they want this specific thing to work. So that's great.
Exactly.
That's great insight. I'm happy that you got through it and you found so much success and yeah,
Well, thank you.
No, no, that's amazing. And I've loved hearing your story as well as how you've kind of gone from a few different places in your career. Now, you're loving it and everything like that too. So this is our last question we love to ask our guests who come on here. And it is, as the Luminary panel ourselves, what would you tell us to give us advice for going forward? Anything that you see we could improve on or anything of that nature as well? Do you have any advice for us?
I think just the general advice is to be as much of a resource for people as you can, and help people achieve what they are looking to do. I said this earlier, help people meet their goals first.
Mhm.
I know BNI does a thing. The philosophy they practice is givers gain,
ooh,
and
Love
what
that.
it means is that people who give will gain.
ooh,
And so I used to belong to another networking group in Indianapolis called Rainmakers, and we practiced that. And it was always fun to see two experienced rainmakers who had never personally met. And they start talking, and you always meet at the networking groups and you say, what do you do? And you get to talking about that. And then they would rush to see who could be the first to say, how can I help you?
yeah,
and
Mhm.
and so it's always funny to see them. They're both racing, trying to be the first one to say, how can I help you? And if you have that philosophy, uh it, the blessings or the karma or the cool points or whatever, that will be visited back on you
yeah,
if you rush to help people first, and just know that it's going to come back.
yeah,
So that's my best advice I give any entrepreneur.
No, I love that.
yeah.
It's almost like karma in a way. It comes back to what you put out. So I love that.
Yeah,
Yep,
we
exactly.
appreciate it because our main mission is to serve, and we really want to give back as much as possible, even if the content isn't for everybody, but at least one or two people that watch the show or our continuous watchers, they get some out of this and actually use it and put it to action is what we are most excited about. Last thing, please, please, please show everyone your books and where they can find them for purchase.
Okay. You can find all of my books on Amazon. Actually, the first book I ever got credit for writing was Branding Yourself, How to Use Social Media to Invent or Reinvent Yourself. And I wrote that with Kyle Lacey back in 2010. You can see it in the background, that yellow book. I helped him write Twitter Marketing for Dummies back in 2009. And
Oh,
we had such a good
cool.
time. We said, hey, let's write this. So it's been published in French and German and Spanish and Japanese and I think Polish. And then a year
Wow.
after that, I wrote No Bullshit Social Media with Jason Falls, and he's a big name in influencer marketing. So, in fact, I'm going to plug his book real quick, Winfluence. So, influence with a W, Winfluence. If you want to be an influencer, get his book, listen to his Winfluence podcast. But in 2011, we wrote No Bullshit Social Media.
Nice.
And then I've ghostwritten a number of different books, but then I recently republished Mackinac Island Nation, and it's spelled with a C, but it's pronounced with a W because it's French. Mackinac Island Nation, and this is a humorous satire book that I just finished a sequel to. That it's with my publisher now. In fact, before this I had a meeting with my publisher about the edits that she's going to be doing. So that book's coming out next May.
Thanks.
Wow.
Nice.
Everyone make sure you look into these books and read away.
Yes, sir. I'm definitely getting that Branding Yourself because
Yes.
that's a big time thing for us, for sure. So, Eric, thank you so much for your time. Can you give us any final remarks that you have and also where we can find you on social media?
Sure. I think my best final remark is to stay curious. You should always be learning something, and it doesn't have to be about your journey and your entrepreneurship, but just learn something new every day. Keep that muscle flexed. As far as where you can find me, I'm eDeckers on Twitter. I'm not calling it the other thing. And Instagram, I'm Erick Deckers, ERIKDECKERS. And you can find my my humor column at erickdeckers.com, and problogservice.com is my work.
Wow, that's awesome. And everyone make sure you follow him on his various social media platforms, and also make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to our channel at the Luminary Panel, and that's across the board on social media as well. And thank you so much again for speaking with us today.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And then again, another incredible episode of the Luminary Panel. We're almost finished with this season. Make sure you stay tuned for our next guest. It is just as impactful as this one with Eric. But thank you for watching. And we're out of here.